Hello everyone and welcome to Let's Play Starfy Origins. And ignore what the title screen says. It's technically true, but also it's the fan translation because check the description. In the last part, we finished off the game, but as you can tell by the total screen here, we still got a lot to do. Now that we've beaten the final boss, we can access any of the 9 levels in the game, kind of the tutorial level, to enter in any order we want, and you can even enter them multiple times. But first, let's take a look down here with the select button. This is the enemy encyclopedia we've been doing stuff for throughout the game. Any enemy you see, any character you meet, anything you defeat, you get entries in here, and you can get little blurbs about them from Mo. This is counted for 100%, at least in my book, just because there's an actual number that has a full end, and we're going to be doing the rest of this throughout the rest of the LP, which I'll talk about how it's going to be structured when we get into the first actual level. Next up, we got the treasure menu. This is where the various treasure chests that were scattered in the ending will show up once we collected a lot of them. Over here is a collection of the minigames throughout the game, and you can play on them even on the higher difficulties from here, but I'm going to be doing that in the levels instead for reasons. This is just the postcard menu, so you can see what progress you have on that. And over here's the bonus. This is where you can view the ending, the various credits, one certain other thing we'll get throughout our visits in the postgame and all that. For now, we're just gonna re-enter Lobber's Cave. Well, looks like we'll be working together again, huh? We've gotta hurry up and find that treasure. So, what'd you think about me defeating Ogura like that? Thanks to that, all the magic has vanished from those annoying sealed blocks. Now, even a wimpy spin like yours can break them. Well, back to the adventure. Just ask if you need any help. In fact, let's do that right now just to see what he'll say. There's a whole bunch of those sealed blocks over near where Herman is. Suspicious, don't you think? Perhaps there's some treasure nearby. So Mo in the postgame essentially exists to hint you towards where a treasure chest you might not have gotten yet is within the levels. On top of that, we can now actually break the sealed blocks. You could theoretically hack your way past them in the earlier versions of the stage, but post-game versions of the stages actually count as separate maps for reasons. Thus, if you tried to enter those doors, I think you just find nothing from memory, from what I remember looking into on, like, cutting room floor and all that. It appears you haven't unlocked the costume. With it, you'd be able to frighten enemies. If you want the costume, you should head to the Sea of Ice and meet Fluffy. The various NPCs throughout the game, you can still talk to them, and they'll often hint you towards where certain items are, like the vehicles, where other treasure chests could be, and all that. Worth doing, but not necessary. So behind our first sealed block set, we have a mole tank section. This is mostly here for star pearls, but also there's an enemy I believe that is exclusively found here. So for the encyclopedia, you're gonna need to do this. Speaking of star pearls, we currently had, I think by the time we entered this level, about 1,500 or so of them collected. We need quad 9s in order to finish off the postcard. Postgame is where you're going to be getting most of your star pearls, and there are like 2 or 3 specific points and 2 or 3 specific levels I would recommend if you need to actively grind them out. I'll talk more about those in depth as we go through the postgame though, because we're going to be here for a bit. Although maybe not as much as it currently is as I'm recording this. For reasons I'll talk about more as we go in a few moments, I am slightly re-editing the postgame and taking a look to see where I can shorten some time lengths here and there, because otherwise, at the current moment at least, this postgame has us going until part 17, when we beat the game in part 8, so over half the LP is postgame. Which gets into part of the thing with tedium with this postgame, but for right now, what we just saw, there was an exclamation point over Starfy. Whenever you see that, you are in a room with a treasure you need for the postgame to be concluded. The exclamation point can mean one of 3 things, though, ultimately. Whether or not you're in the room with the treasure in it outright, whether or not you're in a room that leads to a room with a treasure in it, or if you're in a room with a path that leads to where the treasure is. It kind of depends on what the treasure itself is and what pathway it leads to. Like one case I can think of in the, I think it's the sunken ship level, for instance, the areas where the keys are where some treasures technically are, but those are teleports that lead to where the treasure are, but you'll still get the exclamation point ding there. By and large, though, most of the treasures in their treasure chest form are hidden in entirely new sections of the levels that you have not been able to access yet. Although you can see where the doors that lead to them are, hence why we saw so many sealed blocks throughout the entire campaign. When you grab a treasure chest, you open it up, and then we go to the treasure menu to see what's inside. Like in this case, we got a dice. 1 out of 45 done. And then the game tallies up your star pearls up to that point, and you're sent back to the level select. This is where the post-game can really wear on some people though, because you can only grab one treasure per visit into a level. So that means at maximum for some of the later levels, you're visiting some of these levels upwards of 7 times for a 100% playthrough, sometimes more in the case you're farming star pearls at them. Now, the early stages don't have that many treasure chests. For instance, Lobber's Cave here only has 3 chests to grab. But that still means you're revisiting the same level design over and over and over again because you got to start the stages entirely over. Now, to help counter this, the way we are structuring the post-game in general is that after this instance, because I'm keeping this trick through the first room in just so I can explain this, by and large moving forward, whenever we grab a treasure, I am then going to cut back to the door that led us to that treasure and continue on from there with all the pearls that I would have grabbed along the way again anyway. That will save us a lot of time, even though it sounds kind of annoying, like I would cut to straight here otherwise if I wasn't having to explain this. To put it directly in a numerical sense, using the videos I have rendered thus far and commentated over thus far, the main game, with some very minor editing, is about 3 hours long. Probably about 3 hours, 10 minutes editing out any like retries of a room or reloading a save file because I messed up something very early on in a recording or things like that. The post-game, unedited, is about 6 hours long, so double the length. And that's mostly just because you're trekking through the same level design over and over again. Now, in terms of what that comes into with the editing, I think I probably balanced it out to probably be about another 3 hours, so I cut out like 2 hours as it is right now, but I'm going to be looking through each of these videos as we go before I start commentating and see if I can like speed up a little more here and there and all that. In the case we're just trekking through a level normally though, I am going to try to speed it up so we can get from one level to next more quickly. I essentially will probably stop fast forwarding when we get close to another door. Or at least on the path that leads to where a sealed block pathway is. I do find the first few levels of this kind of revisit interesting, as there's new pathways you couldn't access before because of your upgraded star spin, you have more vehicles now and all that, so there's more areas you could explore that you even saw earlier. But by endgame, this gets to be tedious. I'm gonna tell you outright, don't be surprised if I just kind of start talking in some parts about things that have been happening in other games I've been playing, what I've been playing and all that, because this post-game is one of those that can be probably very fun to play, but it can be also probably very tedious to watch and commentate over. For our final treasure here in Lobber's Cave, come over to this room, enter this room here, and we got a hot air balloon stage. So if you didn't grab that yet, you're gonna need to go over to the Coral Reef and grab this vehicle. This is why I recommended grabbing all the vehicles you could along the way, and on the main campaign, I think you can only grab 4 of the 5 as it is. So this means you can now minimize the amount of revisits on some stages to a certain number, because I would hate to be in a state where I went to where a treasure chest is and realized, oh, I forgot to grab this particular vehicle. Great, I have to come back here again. Which wouldn't be the worst for your star pearl count, admittedly, but that's probably admittedly why you need quad 9 star pearls to max out the postcard, because they knew you were going to be trekking back and forth in this entire section. Alright, treasure number 3 is a feather. We also got a bow and arrow earlier. That's Lobber's Cave all done. It's honestly a pretty harmless set of revisits. Pretty quick to the point because the level itself isn't very large and it's all new stuff for what that level is. I'd say the worst of the post-game doesn't come in until, like, the Sea of Ice, for reasons we'll talk about when we reach that particular level. And hey, we got the little jellyfish on the postcard now. That's neat. Admittedly, I also probably didn't choose the best way to record this entire thing, where I just blitzed entirely through a single level at a time to grab every treasure within that one before moving on to the next one. So I had do the same level design, not only over and over again to begin with, but over and over again in a row. Hey, remember those currents that suck you downward? There's a door over there blocked by sealed blocks. Don't miss it. There shouldn't be treasure in there. Talking to Mo is a very good place to get a reminder of where sealed blocks could be in the case you didn't see them or don't remember where they are in the level design, by the way. But also, there are some extra sealed block rooms in some levels that just lead outright to star block rooms. Usually they're more so for like a single enemy for your encyclopedia as well, but the star blocks I think are more important because you have to build towards more of that. something I could very easily recommend if you're doing this yourself. Instead of just doing all of the treasures in one level at a time and then moving on to the next one, do them each level sequentially in a row. So do one in Lobber's Cave, then one in the Coral Reef, then one in the next level, and all that until you loop back around to the beginning, until you run out of treasures in a stage, and then just remove that from the rotation. Because at least then, yes, you're technically playing through the game upwards of 6, 7 times in a row, by that definition. But at least you're keeping things varied and seeing different level aesthetics every, like, 10 minutes, maybe. As it is here, you're probably seeing the same level aesthetic for upwards of an hour in some cases. Also, now that I think about it in retrospect, I guess, now that I've recorded the entire game, yeah, grabbing Star Pearls along the way, especially in the main campaign, is helpful, but when it comes to the post-game, I would actually recommend just saving that for the Sky of Sea, because easily the best individual way to get Star Pearls is in that level on the revisits. Like, that and the Sea of Ice, I think, are probably the best ways to actually grab Star Pearls. Because I think they both have the most farmable methods, but also in terms of just going start to finish from, like, the start of the Sea of Ice to where the final treasure chest is, there are a lot of Star Pearls just along that route, so that makes that very easy to farm out. Also, a choice I have yet to make in redoing some of these videos in terms of the editing after the fact. I'm not sure if I should fast forward through new enemies, because if you're playing along and using this as like a guide, even with the fast forward in place, you're gonna fight the new enemies along the way anyway. I'm definitely not fast forwarding entirely new sections of the level, though. That doesn't feel right to me. As you can tell, doing even the early levels over and over again still builds up your Star Pearls very quickly. Like, 100 for Coral Reef is a lot for as little of that stage as we did to get to that sealed block route. For instance, in that, I think there's a new enemy in one of these 4 rooms in this area here, where we were chasing that one fish that eventually led us to the first room we met Mo in. I think it's these turtles here we actually haven't taken care of before, so I'm going on my way to come in here and take care of one now. But if you're looking for treasure chests anyway, you're probably going to be exploring every room at least once again anyway, so... Hey, Starf, you made it! Is this the place where we first met? Break the sealed blocks around here and enter the door. It may lead to the treasure. By the way, have you heard of Old Man McCanny who's working on a balloon? To find Old Man McCanny, try entering the door next to where the seahorses are. Which we already have done, but we want to come up here and take care of this treasure chest in this direction. If memory serves, this is a broomstick vehicle section that has its own unique enemy, so here we go. The later broomstick sections are kind of funny just because of how easily you can cheese them by just doing a brief charge of your attack and then letting it unleash, because it'll track into basically any enemies as long as you stay towards like the middle third of the screen. But don't be surprised if there's some enemies below you that can surprise you in some cases, let alone the fact there's usually spikes either above or below you in them. So something that would be cool to eventually see come to pass is future full ROM fan translations for Starfy's 2 through 4, because I would love to cover the entire series at some point. At the moment, there are translations for Starfy 2 through 4, either on old text-based websites or people like Autumn Child doing on-screen translations in their own Let's Plays. But I don't speak Japanese, so that's beyond me at the moment, at the least. Otherwise, I'll probably just skip straight to Starfy 5 whenever I come back to this series. But it also should be noted just how recent of a fan translation this is for what I tend to do. This fan translation came out in September of 2023, and as I just said, I've been recording this basically through, like, early to mid-December. So, this is only a few months old at this point. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if they put out a patch to fix some of the few typos and naming errors in some of the cutscenes we've already seen. I would love to see them do another one of the future games, but that's a lot of work, and I'm not going to expect them to do that, because doing one of these is a lot. I've never been on a hacking team, because I know it would be beyond me, essentially. But it's a lot of work, I can tell. Because I remember reading the translation logs on some stuff, like some of the Mother 3 stuff, even after that release, going, oh my god, holy crap. Or even, this is even technically a fan translation at this point. If you're a fan of Trails, you owe yourself to look up some of the articles that I think Xseed staff wrote about translating specifically Trails in the Sky SC. they went through some shit. But now it's time for some minigames again, because now that we are on the second lap of stages, all of the minigames have their normal and hard mode difficulties unlocked. I am going to be playing both of the later two difficulties on screen in these revisits, though I'm going to be speeding them up severely. The main reason you want to do both is I think you get dialogue hinting towards some stuff if you beat the normal mode thing, but you actually get a much more tangible reward for beating the hard mode of any given minigame. By and large, what changes throughout the minigames depends on what the minigame is. For instance, here in Seahorse Catch, now there's moving platforms that can bounce these seahorses around, meaning their positions are a little more unpredictable. Great job! Hey, have you heard this rumor? Somewhere around this coral reef there's apparently someone working on a balloon. You should go and find him if you haven't already. I'm sure he'll be able to help you in some way. Well then, take these pearls. You also get a notably higher pearl reward for beating a minigame on normal or higher than on easy. But if you beat a minigame on normal on a revisit, what's interesting is if you come back in, you're immediately locked onto playing it on hard mode, so they know what you're doing. One of the biggest difficulty buffs that the hard modes like to do for minigames on top of combining prior level design things is in the case there's a fail state like spikes beneath Mo, they'll make it so that it covers the entire bottom of the screen, so you really have to be holding down that B button and rushing over and paying attention to where things are bouncing about. Because having to restart a minigame at the 11th hour just sucks universally. Thank you for your hard work. Let me lead you to a place with a super rare creature. It's rumored to be some sort of ghost. You should try to add it to your picture book. Also, take these pearls. You get a good 30 pearls on average for beating the hard mode of any given minigame. But the more tangible reward is that they'll lead you to a room, usually a portion of a room you've already been to, or an entirely new room in some cases, that usually, in fact always, has a unique enemy that can only be found in that area. In this case, I actually had to re-enter the room because for some reason this enemy wouldn't spawn for a moment. We got a ghost fish here. I think it's a recolor of the one from the sunken ship level that had the third key we went for. Also, before we continue too far in this particular level, we actually want to head back into this room where we first saw the balloon's outline, because now we can actually use it in here. I could have done this as early as our first visit to the coral reef. I just completely forgot to for some reason in recording, as I mentioned back when we were on this level's first visit. This is mostly a Star Pearl room, but there is a new enemy here that I don't think you even need to touch in order to get them into your encyclopedia. You just need to see them. What's weird is they only spawn here at the top left, but they disappear after a set radius from their spawn point, so... Something this level also showcases when it comes to the revisits, though, is that whatever state you left a level in, level design-wise, it will keep that state by and large. Like, the level is still flooded in the background levels after you destroy the tea and kettle on our first visit, so you don't need to worry about going back to do that. So this room actually has technically three entrances. One leads to an area we're about to go so we can take care of a fish we saw all the way back in part 2, I believe. So now we have that for the encyclopedia. But the main entrance we just used is by dashing up to a door near where the boss fight is. But you can enter this room from just to the left of where we entered this entire long section of level where the seahorse minigame is and all that. But in order to get every enemy, you do need to enter it through the entrance we used. Because otherwise you can only hit those little skateboarding guys. The ocean's a big place! I'm sure there's still creatures out there you haven't seen. If you come across any sealed blocks, be sure to break them. Yeah, we're on it, Mo, we're on it. So at this point, our next destination is actually the boss fight already. Because boss fights also have a treasure chest for us. Hey, looks like you were able to find the two treasures after all. Just try and take my treasure from me. Now, I've seldom attempted to, but I'm not sure if you actually can fight the bosses until you get all the other treasure chests in the level, because sometimes the dialogue implies you need that, but I've always done them in basically the order that they appear in a level, even if I go from level to level to level. So by and large, boss fight rematches do get a couple of change-ups. For one thing, they're more aggressive with their patterns from the start. Usually they'll use their end of battle patterns from the main game after their first hit. But here in the case of Conk, he goes much higher in the sky more often than not, tries to slam down on you, but you can just do a quick circle around him and not have to worry about it. Lomber's Cave is a pretty straightforward revisit, as is the Coral Reef on the whole, because since they only have 3 treasures each, you're only in them for about 10-20 minutes, even without editing, so not too bad. It's as we get into the bigger levels that are already longer to begin with, that have more treasure chests, that things start to get a little messy. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 10, we head after the next level's treasure chest before seeing where we go after that. See you guys then.